Hello, it's Mike Rasmussen, CPA Straight Talk for Small Business. And we got Thursday. What is the date today? Thursday, August 20th. I should know that. So, today's talk to you small business owners is specifically about the final what was termed the executive order, although it's a memorandum by President Trump on August 8th. And the final one is, and I will be showing you my screen, but it has to do with the payroll tax holiday, okay? And memorandum on deferring payroll tax obligations in light of the ongoing COVID-19 disaster. Specifically what we're going to do, there were 4 of them. And this is the final one I'm going to talk about. And it has to do with, and what's coming September 1 is all the payroll processors are desperately looking for guidance on what their organizations need to do for all the small businesses in the country. That's how crazy this is. So let me share my screen and I will show you how it all came about. Here we go. We have the initial, these are the presidential actions by the White House, and what I do is that's how I found it here in payroll tax obligations. Of the 4, there was a memorandum that authorized. This first one was for the unemployment. The second one had to do with student loan repayment, payment relief. The third one we talked about, which is providing assistance to renters and homeowners. And then this final one has to do with payroll tax obligations. And again, it's a memorandum. It's not an executive order, although it was termed out there an executive order. It's actually a memorandum. So it's a direction to one department, which is the Secretary of Treasury. Okay? All right. So in this memorandum, let me get into some of the details, and I'll show you kind of how it works here. All right, here we go. So let's get into right here. Okay, so here is the obligations, okay? Basically the policy, what happens. And let's get down. Deferring certain payroll tax obligations, okay? All right, so let me get into this one. And here we go. So this had to do with which obligations are they? So I wanted to say the Secretary of the Treasury is hereby directed to use his authority pursuant to 26 USC. That's basically the tax code, the Internal Revenue Tax Code, to defer the withholding, deposit, and payment of the tax imposed by this 26 USC 3101A. Without details, it's real simple. It's the Social Security, the 6.2% of wages that the employee incurs that are paid. Okay, so it's called, here's 26 US, it's old age survivors and disability insurance. You've heard of OASDI, that's OASDI, or you've heard of FICA. So this is the 6.2%. That's the piece that we're dealing with. Okay, all right. So in here, in this memorandum, so let me just go up here. I'm going to bring this up to you. We have got, that is the code, and it's the 6.2. It's not the Medicare plus the 1.45. It's the 6.2, and it's not the employer's piece of it. It's just the employee. So the deferral shall be made available with respect to any employee, amount of whose wages or compensation payable during any bi-weekly pay period generally less than $4,000. Bi-weekly. So basically that means, in essence, every other week, twice a month. But basically bi-weekly. So is less than any bi-weekly period of $4,000. Amounts deferred pursuant to the implementation shall be deferred. Okay, the biggest catch right here. It is deferred, without any penalties, interest, additional amount, or additions to the tax. So if this amount that is the employee's share of OASDI, which is FICA, 6.2% up to $4,000 of the employee's piece from September 1 to December 31, 2020. So what are payroll processors doing right now? They are scrambling to, if this happens, how are they going to, if someone defers on a paycheck dated September 1st, how is that going to happen, and how are the withholdings? And it's actually, from a compliance perspective, it's just not that easy. Now, here's a line item that caused some angst, if you will. So the Secretary of the Treasury shall explore avenues, including legislation, to eliminate the obligation to pay the taxes deferred pursuant to the implementation of this memorandum. So in other words, what happens when you defer from September 1 to the end of December, which is what this memorandum is for, and would there potentially be a tax forgiveness? So the Secretary of Treasury is supposed to explore and give guidance how to execute, and then explore tax forgiveness. So I also went to one of the organizations I go to called AICPA, and on August 13th, as soon as this came out, we being CPAs, advisors towards, are requesting guidance, and here is a memorandum to the Treasury Secretary here for guidance. In the letter, the AICA requests the Treasury and the IRS provide guidance to address a number of concerns. I'll go through real quick. Guidance stating that the deferral is voluntary and that an eligible employer is responsible for making an affirmative election to defer the payroll taxes. Second, guidance that an eligible employee is an employee whose wages are less than $4,000 per biweekly pay period. Guidance stating that the $4,000 limit should apply separately to each employer of an employee, obviously, if there's a couple. And then guidance stating a payment due dates for the deferred taxes and a mechanism for employees to pay the deferred taxes. After December 31, you add them all up. How is the employee who deferred have to pay the taxes, and what mechanism is that going to happen? These are why payroll processors right now are under the gun to implement and build. It's very tough to do. Implement and build so that when this happens. Now, here's something that I wanted to show you. In addition, the thought was this announcement from Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin indicated that the payroll tax deferral would not be mandatory for employers to implement. Since the taxes being discussed are those imposed on the income of each employee, a big question we have is whether or not employees will have the option to opt in or out of the program. So, and then it goes on to say, employees should make the deferral decision, and the employees should make this decision and be responsible for repayment. And there are certain questions that need to be considered for taxpayers and business, and we need more guidance. That's the bottom line. So I then went to the Treasury Secretary site, and I tried to find anything I could that was recent on Secretary Mnuchin issuing guidance. So today being August 20th, I would have expected something. We only have 11 days before September 1 to come out on how to withhold, how payroll processors are attempting to withhold, and then on the back end, if an employee is going to be expected to it's just defer and to pay it back at December 31st, after December 3rd, how are they going to do it, and when and how? So as you can imagine, if this is turning out to be voluntary, how it happens from the employee and for the employer, if that turns out, then how is it going to happen on the back end? Now that's a huge decision if the employees, or if what comes out is, if in the executive order if it is actually considered, if Secretary of the Treasury explores avenues including to eliminate the obligation to pay the tax deferred pursuant to the implementation of this memorandum. If an employee defers the OASDI 6.2% on wages from September 1 to December 31, 2020, and if that amount is going to be, you're going to see a lot more action on this executive order. So the piece that I'm waiting for right now is this piece right here. Is that piece right there to find out. So as I find it out, I will let you know. But that is the biggest takeaway from here is the deferment, which is in the executive order, which is a memorandum, has that been decided if that's going to be deferred or eventually forgiven. Now, you can my advice, do not rely on I've even heard that depending on the president, it's kind of a talking point. If I become president, this will be one piece of it that I would make sure that it's forgiven. This needs to be in an order, it needs to be law, and it needs to be guidance given to us from the IRS or the Secretary of Treasury of how they're treating these deferred. I would not rely on who's going to make president. If I make president, I'll defer it. Okay? All right. So that is in summary, that is what we talked about was the payroll tax. It's referred to as it's an obligation, but starting effective September 1st. It was part of the package of executive orders issued by President Trump on August 8th. And this payroll tax was a deferment for an employee of the OASDI, which is the FICA, which is 6.2% of wages under $4,000 on a biweekly basis. Okay. And that is deferred from September 1 to December 31. Now, right now, there's guidance that needs to be issued on when the employee would pay that back after December 31st. There's also instructions out of the memorandum to Secretary of Treasury to explain tax forgiveness if that can be possible and or allowed, and guidance therefrom. So the whole piece has to do with a payroll tax. So I have not seen anything on the Treasury Secretary, Department of Treasury Secretary side from Secretary Mnuchin. I haven't seen anything there yet. I haven't seen any guidance for not only the payroll processors to follow, or the employers to follow, or for the employees. So you as a small business, there's a question of, is it voluntary? Whether the employer, which is you, Mr. Small Business, which is you. So do I have to comply on September 1 to automatically withhold this payroll tax, or is the guidance going to come out where the employee directs the employer? And how at the end of December 31 of all the deferment, how does that happen for the Treasury, for the employers, and for the employees? Still out there, that's something to consider. So, Mike Rasmussen, CPA Straight Talk for Small Business on August 20th. Have a great day, and I will see you tomorrow.